Hello, everyone. Welcome to Minuteman Report. This is your host, Robert Hensley, coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere in North America and having some really interesting, technical issues here in the studio today. For today's show, I'm talking about something that seems a little bit like science fiction. It's almost like something we would expect to hear, in one of those sci-fi movies, or an adventure film like Indiana Jones, or one of those horror films like The Relic or Mimic. Like, we hear it all starts with an archaeological team digging up a tomb and finding, DNA or seeds or pods from the past, and then bringing them into the laboratory and germinating this thing that becomes, a killer plant or a killer species or something that, they have to save the world. However, if we look at this through not the eyes of science fiction, but what archaeologists and scientists are actually able to do now, what we're talking about, these heirlooms, these archaeological heirlooms that are more valuable than gold, are actually legacy seeds. Heirloom seeds, vegetables that we thought were, and I shouldn't say vegetables, fruits and vegetables that we thought were extinct, are now have been brought back from the brink, right? So, and this is not something that's just happening in one particular location. We know that archaeologists have found, 3,000-year-old seeds in Turkey. They've found grapes and peas and broad beans. And what this did was it helped the scientists. It told the scientists about what the eating habits were for the people in that region, what they traded, how they stored food. But then we look at finds like the 2,000-year-old Judean date palm seeds that they found in Israel. And now, like, the USDA says that seeds are, good for a couple of years, and then after that you can't really germinate them. But what they found was that these 2,000-year-old seeds actually grew date trees, and those trees did bear fruit. So we now have an extinct date that is back on the planet, right? Same thing, 1,300-year-old sacred lotus, those seeds, they were able to germinate, and now we are growing offspring from this sacred lotus. And one of the lesser known things is that in the 1980s, they discovered in New Mexico, in caves where the Anasazi were thought to live. And let's first and foremost, let's talk about Anasazi. That's more of a derogatory term. Anasazi means ancient enemy. And so what most people say now is ancient Pueblans, or Puebloans. And these beans were found in a cave in the 1980s. And they were inside a clay pot that had been sealed with pitch, pine tar. And they took the beans and germinated them, and now we've actually brought back the Anasazi bean, right, or the New Mexico cave bean. So this bean, which is been carbon dated to be about 1,500 years old, right? These beans have now been brought back from what we thought was extinction. We didn't know about them. So they're considered to be the second oldest seed to have been germinated on the planet, right? Which is really great. Now, legacy seeds or heirloom seeds, heirloom is anything from a species that is 50 years or older. So, 2,000 years, 1,500 years, 1,300 years. These are definitely heirloom plants, right? But what's really important about the value of these archaeological finds, these biological archaeological finds, I should say, is that we're able to use them to protect and preserve traditions for indigenous peoples, right? It's not just about bringing this being back from extinction, but it's about going back to the ancestors or the offspring, the kind of contemporary offspring of these ancestors, and giving them an opportunity to connect with the past, to further this idea of connecting to an ancestral food. Now, I'm not exactly sure why, and it's all over the internet. If you look at the word Anasazi, you're told immediately on Google that it is a derogatory term. It shouldn't be used, that ancestral Puebloan should be used. But every market, every grower, every distributor is selling beans under this name, right? Maybe ancestral Puebloan bean doesn't have the same ring to it. But anyway, so the question becomes, what else is lost or still stored out there somewhere that hasn't been found that we can bring back to help preserve cultures or traditions of indigenous people, things that have been almost completely wiped off the face of the planet by colonization. You know, we know that in the United States, as other places around the world, that the government sanctioned creating food deserts to control indigenous populations and get them to move on. You know, at one point, the Great Plains states hosted 63 million heads of American buffalo, of bison. And in a very short amount of time, the American government kills off, right, 60 million of those animals to dry up a food source so that they could open the Great Plains for colonization. And so what we're now finding is that scientifically that we're able to reintroduce plants and animals into these kind of areas where they were taken from and allow for the indigenous populations to kind of make a comeback and start connecting with the history and traditions that were taken from them. Yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. And like I said, it does sound like the start of a science fiction movie where we start finding things under the earth and then we start playing with them and putting them in the ground and watering them and to see what will happen. And I just hope that they just stick to, to plants. I don't know if I'm ready for them to bring back dinosaurs yet. Anyway. Thank you so much for joining me today for the Minuteman Report. As always, there are 3 opportunities every week for new Truth Be Told content. There's me, the Minuteman Report, on Mondays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern. There's Bonnie Burkert, same time on Wednesdays with Truth Be Told Transformations. And of course, Tony Sweet has the original Truth Be Told on Fridays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern. And again, don't forget, we are adding some new content to the brand, to the mix, and we'll have a Spanish language Truth Be Told hosted by musical artist Metaphor coming up in a couple of weeks. And until then, keep tuning in. We'll be here. We'll be delivering strange and unusual stories and covering the topics that most consider paranormal. So until next week, stay true.